Can everyone see the slides? Hopefully so. Okay. Great. Well, Jakita, Jessica, Joanna, Frieda, and I are thrilled to share this work with you, and we want to say thank you to Shuchi for leading us in this effort, and congrats to all the authors involved. This chapter was generated from our collective research focused on equity pedagogies, which are essentially assets-based approaches to working with minoritized students, or what some folks might commonly say as students of color. We're thinking about justice-oriented approaches. And in our chapter, we highlight how educators can move beyond an access and an achievement frame for thinking about programming and kind of the pedagogies that they use, to really focusing on empowering students and taking up justice-oriented approaches and programming as we work with learners. We see educators using this chapter in a few ways. One is to understand what culturally relevant pedagogy is and what learner-centered pedagogies look like, why it's important to use it in programming and computer science classrooms, what it can do for students, especially our students from minoritized communities or students of color. We hope you enjoy it and we welcome your feedback. And now I'm going to give it over to Frieda as we move into the key takeaways from our chapter.
Thank you, Tia, so much for that introduction. We decided to present collaboratively because that's how we made the chapter. And while I get started, I just want to first recognize that we're living in very different circumstances than when we wrote the chapter of this book. We're living through an extraordinary and urgent time for our schools and communities in the US. So while all schools are impacted by COVID-19 this year, schools and communities of color are bearing the brunt of the global pandemic. At the same time, they're experiencing racial trauma through the recent high-profile murders of Black men, women, and children by police. So both COVID-19 and the George Floyd uprisings have brought to the public attention many historic and ongoing health and economic inequities faced by schools and communities of color. So while we're considering what equitable teaching practices look like, we want to be clear about the moment that we're in and to recognize that massive investments need to be made in communities of color in order to address these inequities. Underrepresented students of color deserve and need much more from all of us to make schools and classrooms the safe, warm, and welcoming environment that we all want them to be. So we wanted to just share a little bit about what culturally relevant pedagogies is, and in the simplest form, it's the idea of connecting computer science concepts and principles with students' lived experiences and cultural backgrounds. And I'll give it back to Tia to talk about the last bullet on this slide.
Yeah, and so we see teachers using culturally relevant pedagogy, or CRP, for computer science and programming in order to connect with students' cultures and life experiences. We really hope that that tenet around building on students' cultural practices, right, and not in ways that appropriate, and help make connections between those ideas and what we're teaching in the classroom, so the content. We also see CRP empowering students to become change agents, and so that's thinking about the ways in which they can use their programming knowledge to change our world. So for example, we've shared with students, other students their same age who have developed apps to document police brutality, students who have developed all manner of technologies that support their communities and solve problems that are relevant to them. And that's what we mean by empowering students. And then most importantly, building relationships with students, families, and communities.
We wanted to give you all some ways to plug in. So the K4 Center has started an initiative we're calling the Equitable Computer Science Curriculum Initiative. You can find us online by Googling that. I guess you can't click this link because it's screen shared. But if you want to sign up for the forthcoming e-newsletter, and then there's a series of webinars, this project is designed to build a national framework on what culturally relevant pedagogies in CS could mean. We also have for Bay Area folks and folks who are interested in supporting Bay Area students, the Rising AP STEM Scholars Initiative, where you can mentor underrepresented students of color. And then, of course, Tia was thoughtful to include our Twitter handles. There are 4 out of the 5 of us who are active on Twitter, so please do check out, follow, and support our work and be part of our community through that too.
Yeah, and we'll share this information from this slide on our Twitter feed, so look out for that. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks.